In the beginning days of the world, when the earth was still young and wild, there lived a man whose heart was different from all the others. His name was Noah. While the world around him grew loud with anger and darkness, Noah walked quietly with God, listening to a voice that others had forgotten how to hear. The land stretched wide and beautiful, rolling hills covered in green, rivers that sparkled under the sun, and skies that swept across the horizon in endless blue. But something had gone terribly wrong. The hearts of people had turned away from goodness. Violence filled the streets. Cruelty replaced kindness. And God, who had made all things with love, looked down with a heavy heart. Noah was a farmer, a father, a quiet man who worked the soil and cared for his family. His hands were strong from labor, his eyes gentle from years of seeking truth. He had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and a wife who stood beside him through every season of life. Together, they lived simply, humbly, faithfully. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon and the world grew still, God spoke to Noah. It was not a voice that shook the ground or split the sky. It was a voice that filled Noah's heart with unmistakable clarity. God told him that the world had become filled with corruption, that the thoughts of humanity had turned only to wickedness. And because of this, a great flood was coming, a flood that would cleanse the earth and begin again. But Noah had found favor in God's eyes. And so, God gave him a task unlike any other. Build an ark, a massive vessel, a floating refuge, a boat so large it would hold not just Noah's family, but pairs of every living creature, birds of the air, animals of the land, creatures great and small. The instructions were detailed and clear. The ark was to be made of gopher wood, sealed inside and out with pitch to keep the waters away. It would be 3 stories high, with rooms inside and a single door on the side. It would measure 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. A structure so grand that no one had ever seen its equal. Noah did not hesitate, he did not question, he simply obeyed. The sound of hammers began to ring out in the valley. The smell of fresh-cut wood filled the air. Day after day, month after month, year after year, Noah and his sons worked. They sawed and measured, lifted and fastened, shaped and sealed. Their hands grew calloused, their backs grew strong, and their faith grew deeper with every plank they laid. Around them, the world continued as it always had. People laughed at Noah. They mocked him as they passed by. "Why are you building a boat on dry land?" they would shout. "There are no seas here. There is no rain." But Noah kept working. He warned them. He told them what was coming. But their ears were closed and their hearts were hard. Then, as the ark neared completion, something extraordinary began to happen. From the forests and the fields, from the mountains and the plains, animals began to come. They came in pairs, 2 by 2, male and female, just as God had commanded. Birds with brilliant feathers glided down from the trees. Elephants lumbered slowly across the earth. Lions walked beside lambs. Deer moved gracefully through the tall grass. Tiny creatures scurried along the ground, and great beasts shook the earth with their steps. They came without fear, without confusion, guided by an invisible hand, drawn by the voice of their Creator. Noah and his family stood in wonder as the procession continued. They welcomed each pair aboard, guiding them into the rooms prepared for them. The ark, once empty and echoing, now filled with life, rustling, breathing, chirping, growling, humming with the presence of God's creation. When the last animal had entered, God spoke to Noah once more. It was time. Noah gathered his wife, his sons, and their wives. Together, the 8 of them stepped into the ark. They carried with them supplies, provisions, hope, and trust. And then, from somewhere beyond their sight, the great door of the ark swung shut. Not by human hands, but by the hand of God himself. Outside, the sky remained clear. The sun still shone. The people still laughed and mocked. But inside the ark, Noah's family waited in the stillness, surrounded by the sounds of creatures settling into their places. They did not know exactly when it would begin, but they trusted. They believed. Then, on the 17th day of the second month, it happened. The sky, which had been bright and cloudless, suddenly darkened. A distant rumble echoed across the heavens, and then rain. Not a drizzle, not a gentle shower, but torrents, sheets of water cascading from the sky as though the very heavens had been torn open. The fountains of the great deep burst forth from beneath the earth, and water surged upward, meeting the rain that poured down from above. The world that had ignored Noah's warnings now realized the truth. People ran for higher ground. They pounded on the door of the ark. They screamed and cried out, but the door was sealed. The time had passed. Inside, Noah and his family felt the ark tremble. They heard the rush of water rising all around them, and then, slowly, steadily, the ark began to lift. It floated, just as God had promised. The massive vessel that had stood on dry ground now rode upon the swelling waters, held safe in the palm of God's hand. For 40 days and 40 nights, the rain fell. The waters rose higher and higher, covering the hills, swallowing the mountains, erasing every trace of the world that had been. Everything that had breath on dry land perished, but the ark floated on, steady and secure, a sanctuary in the midst of chaos. Inside, Noah cared for the animals. He fed them, comforted them, watched over them. His family worked together in the dim light, trusting that God had not forgotten them. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months. The earth was covered with water as far as the eye could see, a vast, endless ocean beneath a grey and heavy sky. But God remembered Noah. He remembered every creature inside the ark, and in his perfect timing, he sent a wind to blow across the waters. Slowly, gently, the waters began to recede. The ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. The rain had stopped. The fountains of the deep were closed. But still, water covered the earth. Noah and his family continued to wait, patient and faithful, trusting in God's promises. Noah opened the window of the ark and sent out a raven. It flew back and forth, searching for land, but finding none. Then Noah sent out a dove. It flew out over the waters, circling, searching, but it too found no place to rest. It returned to Noah, and he brought it safely back inside. 7 days later, Noah sent the dove out again. This time, when evening came, the dove returned, and in its beak was a freshly plucked olive leaf. Noah's heart leaped. Somewhere, the waters had receded enough for trees to grow again. Life was returning. He waited another 7 days and sent the dove out once more. This time, it did not return. The dove had found a home. The earth was ready. God spoke to Noah. "Come out of the ark, you and your wife, your sons and their wives. Bring out every living creature with you, the birds, the animals, everything that moves along the ground, so they can multiply and fill the earth once more." The door opened. Light streamed in, warm, golden, beautiful. Noah stepped out onto solid ground for the first time in over a year. His family followed. And then, like a great celebration of life, the animals poured forth from the ark. They ran and flew and leaped, spreading out across the fresh, clean earth. The world was silent, washed clean, ready to begin again. Noah's first act was one of gratitude. He built an altar from stones and offered a sacrifice to God, thanking him for his protection, his faithfulness, his mercy. The smoke rose up into the sky, and God was pleased. Then, in the heavens above, something miraculous appeared. Colors arced across the sky: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, bending in a glorious bow from one horizon to the other. It was a rainbow, the very first the world had ever seen. And God made a covenant with Noah, with his family, and with every living creature. He promised that never again would a flood destroy all life on earth. The rainbow would be a sign of that promise, a reminder written in the sky that God keeps his word, that he is faithful, that he watches over his creation with love. Noah had walked by faith when no one else believed. He had obeyed when the task seemed impossible. He had trusted when the waters rose and the world disappeared. And because of his faithfulness, life continued, hope survived, and God's plan moved forward. The story of Noah reminds us that even when the world seems lost in darkness, God sees those who seek him. Even when we face impossible tasks, God provides the strength to complete them. Even when storms rage around us, God is our refuge and our safety. Just as Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord, so too can we. Just as the rainbow promised God's faithfulness, so too does his love remain constant in our lives today. And just as the door of the ark was open to those who entered, so too is God's mercy available to all who call upon his name. The earth was new, the sky was clear, and Noah's family began again, carrying with them the memory of God's salvation and the promise of his everlasting love.